Once upon a time, in a small village of Oba, there lived a young boy named Ike. Ike's parents had passed away when he was very young, and he was left in the care of his uncle Ralph and his wife Amara. As soon as Ike turned 15, his uncle and his wife turned him to the breadwinner of the house, as they were too lazy to work for their own food. He was also responsible for taking care of all the house chores after hustling throughout the day to provide food for everyone. Every day, Ike would go to the river to fish or go hunting in the nearby bush for some meat. He would sell his catch and bring the money home to his uncle. But no matter how hard he worked, his uncle Ralph and his wife would squander the money, leaving Ike with nothing. They would throw parties at their backyard and have Ike cook some of the meat that he had caught for sale to entertain their guests. Ike would eat the leftovers and wear the overused clothes passed down to him by his uncle. One fateful day, as Ike was out fishing, he was having a particularly tough time at the river. He hadn't caught a single fish, and the sun was beginning to set. He knew that if he returned home empty-handed, his uncle would be so furious as there was nothing to eat at home, and they were waiting for him to bring money or food back home. Just as he was about to give up, Ike felt a strong tug on his fishing line. He pulled with all his strength, and to his amazement, he caught a shimmering silver fish. The fish flopped on the riverbank, and then, to Ike's astonishment, it spoke. "Please, kind boy, let me go," the fish pleaded. "I am the last of my kind. Please do not eat me." Ike was dumbfounded. "Did you just speak to me? Or am I too hungry that I'm hallucinating?" Ike asked, questioning his sanity. "You heard me well, kind boy. If you release me, I will grant you a wish, and you can always come back if you need more. Please don't eat me," the fish cried out to Ike. Ike was stunned as he realized the fish could actually talk. Ike looked at his empty basket and looked at the fish with compassion. "I will let you go because you asked. I just wish there would be food at home for my uncle and his wife, so I don't get into trouble," Ike said as he gently placed the fish back into the river. "Thank you," the fish said gratefully. "Just return home. There is plenty of food waiting for you there," the fish replied, and with a flick of its tail, it disappeared into the depths of the river. On his way back, Ike was getting ready to be scolded by his uncle, as he didn't believe in wishes and fairies. But on getting home, he was greeted with the delicious aroma of a feast. The table was laden with all kinds of food, enough to satisfy even his greedy uncle and aunt. Ralph and Amara were delighted, but their happiness quickly turned to suspicion. They demanded to know how Ike had managed to bring home such a bounty. Ike, unable to lie, told them about the shimmering silver fish. His uncle's eyes gleamed with greed, and he hatched a plan to use Ike to get more wishes from the fish. The next day, Ralph forced Ike to go back to the river and summon the magic fish. "Go and ask the fish to turn our house into a mansion. Do not return until that wish is granted," Ralph threatened. Reluctantly, Ike went to the riverbank and called out to the fish. The silver fish appeared before him. "Hello, kind boy. What do you want today?" the fish asked. "My uncle wishes for a mansion," he replied. "The wish is granted," the fish said. "You can return home now." The fish stumbled back into the depth of the ocean. Ike returned home to meet a beautiful mansion in place of the cottage they lived in. Ralph and Amara were ecstatic, but their greed only grew. That night, they stayed awake, thinking of what next to ask of the fish. The next morning, Ralph and his wife called Ike during breakfast and said to him, "Go and ask the fish to turn this house into a palace and make us king and queen. Do not return until that is granted." Ike went back to the riverbank, feeling very sad. He called out to the fish, and once more, the silver fish jumped out of the river. "Hello again, kind boy. What do you want today?" asked the fish excitedly. "My uncle and his wife wants a palace and also to become king and queen," Ike said frustratingly. "You can return home. Their wish is granted," said the fish, as he jumps back into the river. Ike returned home to see a gigantic palace in place of the mansion they requested for earlier. There were also guards outside the palace. He went inside the house and saw his uncle and his wife in royal attires. "I hope you're happy, uncle," Ike asked his uncle, hoping they won't send him back to ask anything from the fish again. "Well, we'll see about that," his uncle replied, laughing hysterically. Ralph and his wife Amara continued to live in their newfound luxury, and Ike continued to serve them, even though they had almost all they needed. One night, Ike's uncle Ralph stayed awake. He was thinking of the next grand request to ask of the fish, and after much thought, it struck him. The next morning, Ralph summoned Ike and said to him, "I want to be immortal. Go and ask your fish to make me a god." Ike was too stunned to speak, but he had no choice but to obey his uncle. He went back to the river and called out to the fish. "My uncle and aunt want to become immortal," Ike said to the fish. The fish's eyes glimmered strangely as he replied, "Their wish is granted once again. You can return home, kind boy." Suddenly, Ralph and Amara began to rise into the air, their bodies transforming into wisps of cloud. Ike got back home and couldn't find his uncle or his wife. He searched around the house, but they were nowhere to be found. Ike ran back to the river to search for answers. "Immortality comes at a price," the silverfish said. "As clouds in the sky, they will live forever. That is what they wished for." Ike looked up to the sky and was terrified to see his uncle and aunt molded as a thick cloud. He immediately begged the fish to reverse the wish. "Please, I wish that you bring them back. They are the only family I have left," Ike pleaded with tears in his eyes. The fish, seeing the boy's genuine concern and kind heart, agreed. "Very well, you can return home. Your wish is granted." "You are a very good boy, despite all they've done to you," the fish said. Ike thanked the fish and ran back home. As he approached their home, he realized the house had changed back to the cottage they had earlier. He went inside the house and met his uncle Ralph and his wife Amara. Shaken by their experience, they hugged Ike tightly. "Thank you for saving us," they said, their voices filled with newfound humility. "And please forgive us for treating you badly all this while." Ike forgave his uncle and his wife, feeling relieved that he got his only family back. From that day on, they treated Ike with kindness and respect. Ike went back to school to further his education, while his uncle Ralph and his wife Amara started small businesses to support their nephew Ike and take care of their family. Occasionally, Ike would go to the riverbank to visit the silverfish, even though he didn't need its wishes anymore. He has something far more valuable: a loving family and a happy home. And so, they all lived contentedly, grateful for the lessons learned and the magic that changed their lives forever. This is the end of my story.